David Crandall, welcome back to the Attraction Pros COVID-19 video series. So glad to see you again because now you're open. So we absolutely want to talk a little bit about that. So how did your opening go?
It went pretty well. We had a good experience. We spent most of last Thursday prepping and setting up, training our staff. We did go through an extensive training with our core staff that we had brought back on board, which was mostly supervisors and managers, shift managers and supervisors. A few of our returning veteran staff that we knew were just ready to go. When I contacted all of the staff that I was ready to bring back on, everybody was very excited to come back on. I only had one employee that wasn't quite ready to come back yet, but that was fine. It's totally understandable. We'll try again in a couple of weeks for that person. But as a whole, my staff was like, "Yes, I'm ready. Please bring me back now. Do you need me to do anything? Do you need me to come in? What day do you want me here? Do you need me to work a longer shift or whatever?" It was really encouraging to see that. We even had one employee whose birthday was on Sunday, and she wanted to spend her birthday with us. She said, "I want to work on Sunday on my birthday. Please let me work on Sunday." So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for us, we definitely appreciated that one of our really hardworking employees really wanted to spend time with their work family on their birthday. So that was a very encouraging element of it.
Very cool. Very cool. David, one of the things you said to us right before we started the videos, you said, everything that you've done from an operating standpoint, from a forecasting and projection standpoint over your last 20-year history is now ancient history, basically. Can you expand a little bit on that as far as kind of what you've been doing to sort of retool that? And then now it's almost like, from a projection standpoint, it's like you're a brand new FEC and just reopened from that. So can you talk us through kind of how that's been like?
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Josh, because we've been hearing that a lot in the different conferences that we've all been on over the last few weeks. And it's starting to happen more and more with the parks as they reopen. You start to realize that, yes, you are almost operating a brand new business. Even though we've been here for 45 years, the park has been closed for 2 months, and now the way that your guests are spending their money is different. The interactions that they want to have are different. So it is a bit of a challenge to kind of turn off that piece of your brain that goes, "Oh my gosh, it's Memorial Day weekend." And historically, we've always been 100% and ready to go and just gas or a foot on the gas pedal. This is the kickoff for the summer. And now you just have to kind of work backwards and go, "No, okay, wait a minute, hold on, stop. We've got to think about where we're at now, what we can have open, what our guest attendance is going to be like, what our gate is going to be, and what our package is going to be." We did retool our packages a little bit going into our opening last weekend, and we're going to continue that. We're going to play with it a little bit. We don't want to obviously adjust things too much. You don't want to completely reinvent the wheel, but we've been looking at what other parks are doing and how they're engaging with their customers and the price points, and understanding that, yeah, we may not be able to charge as much as we did for a pass 4 months ago, but we'll slowly build back to where we were. And it's just a slow process, and it really makes you evaluate what your position is, and everything from what hours you're open to what days you're open. We were always open 7 days a week. The only days we were closed was Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. We were open every other day of the year, which for a kind of a neighborhood family fun center isn't always the case. So you have your seasonalities, and we've always been able to work through that with where we are in California. So now we're working to that process of, do we adjust our days of the week that we're open and close a couple of days just to save labor and save a little bit on the back end? And do we modify our hours and what is open when, fluctuate when rides are open and things like that? It's a whole new management opportunity for the park. It's like I think I was 22 when I started here, so it's like going back to those days, going, okay, relearn everything. Let's throw everything out the window and start over.
Yeah, David, what were some of the key learnings that you had? You were open, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm guessing because you mentioned that you're going to make some tweaks and things for the next time you're open. But what were some of those things that you saw, like with guests and their spending patterns and things like that? Because you said that some of those things had changed. So what were some of those lessons that you learned?
Well, what was interesting was we typically saw in the past, we would see guests dollar, the kind of per person head was about $20 to $25. And now we're seeing it drop to about $15 per person. It's not much, but it did drop a little bit. We did have a few families that with our new pricing model that we put out, we focused on a 2-hour pass, which in the past we were always a full day pass. So you pay one price for the entire day use of the park. You can be here as long as you like. So now we've gone to a 2-hour model to help us control that density in the park and hopefully provide everybody with a great experience via the attractions that we have open, since we don't have 100% of the park open. And a few people, they loved it. They did their 2 hours and then they left and went and got something to eat and they were good. They went on about their day. We did have a couple of families that actually bought additional time blocks on top of that 2-hour mark. So we are seeing a little bit both ways, but I mean, overall, we know that as business levels increase, we're not going to be seeing as many of those incremental sales, the snacks and the pizzas and things like that. They're being a little bit more cautious of how they're spending that back end. Where we push over the top of our goal is with selling that candy and those chips and the snacks and the kind of appetizer, that bar and grill food is where we can really see our profits increase with food and beverage. But we just have to roll with it. We have to change. It's a changing environment and we're learning it as we go.
David, how are you managing this capacity and these time blocks, given that you said normally you just buy a pass and it's valid all day? So now how are you shifting that to, I guess, politely informing guests that their time is up? Or, are you doing kind of a full sweep of the property before kind of, reopening again? Walk us through a little bit kind of how that has worked and how you've kind of adapted that business model.
Of course. So this weekend, we actually got very lucky in that it wasn't overwhelmingly busy. We had families just kind of milling in. They weren't coming in. There wasn't a huge line. I don't think we ever had anything more than probably 2 or 3 families in line for the point of sale at one time, which made it easy to recognize who was in the park, and you could visually see, okay, I know where everybody is. And with the model that we had for the 2 hours, we do a wristband identifier. So they wear a wristband, and then on the wristband we would put the time that their pass expired. And we were liberal with it, give them an extra 15 minutes. Give them an extra 15 minutes if they get to go on one more race car ride or get to play a little bit more mini golf. Totally fine. Just let's be generous here. And essentially, when they got to the race cars, or if they got to the roller skating rink to get roller skates, or if they were on the golf course and they were halfway done with the golf course, let them finish their hole. Let them finish the golf course. If they go 20 minutes over, even a half an hour over, it's not the end of the world. It wasn't busy to where we had to rush people through and do shotgun starts on the golf course like a tournament style. We had talked about that and explored that option if we did have to go that way, but we didn't have to pull that out. So it was very generous on the 2 hours. A lot of people were here for 2.5 hours, or they would they would grab some Dairy Queen, because we do have a Dairy Queen on our property. They would grab some Dairy Queen and they'd be eating an ice cream cone or whatever while they're playing mini golf, and that slows you down a little bit. So it's fine. But as a whole, we just wanted to encourage our guests to be here for that kind of 2-hour stay, because after 2 hours, you kind of run out of stuff to do and you're going to get bored, and you're just not going to be as engaged with those longer 3, 4, 5-hour visits that we've been used to. So it worked very well. The guests seemed to respond to it. Like I said, we had one family that bought 2 extra hours on top of their 2 hours. So they wanted to be here for a while, and they had a great time. So it just gives the guests the freedom to go on and do other things.
Now, David, was your staff and guests required to wear masks? And if so, how did that go?
So yes, in San Bernardino County, on Friday, the day that we opened, they had, it might have been Thursday actually, but they had released the updated mask restrictions to be recommended, but not required, with the caveat that businesses can require it on their end. We had the ultimate deciding power. So we had talked about it very at length, had a long discussion about whether or not we did want to use masks. We knew that we wanted our employees to wear a mask just because the protection is there for the employee, and it gives them that sense of security. Because even though they are excited to come back to work, yeah, there's that little piece of you in the back of your mind that has that concern. So right off the bat, we knew, okay, yeah, let's do masks for employees. So we put that into our procedure, and let's do masks for guests. And we put up sandwich boards at the entrance. I've actually got some pictures I'll send to you, Matt. Or I did send it to you, actually.
Yeah, you did.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So we put up sandwich boards with information signs. We had our cashiers relaying that information when they bought their passes. We also had our shift manager for the day out at the front door as a welcoming ambassador or a host, that when the guests came up, first initial reaction into the park was, hey guys, how you doing? This is what we've got going on. This is how we're able to operate. We are encouraging you guys' cooperation with these parameters that we have in place. This is what we need to be able to do to keep the doors open. And we want to provide you guys with a safe, fun environment. We do need you to wear a mask. If you don't have one, you can go to your car and get a t-shirt, wrap it around your face, whatever you've got available to you. It doesn't have to be fancy, just we do require the face coverings to come in and be in the common areas, to be on the race cars, and to be in those areas where you do have that exposure with other people. If you're in a batting cage stall, I don't expect you to wear a mask because you're batting in an area that's already socially distant. On the golf course, if you're with your small family unit and you don't have your mask on, that's fine. But as soon as you leave the golf course and move into one of those common areas or a pathway or a walkway where other guests are going to be traveling, we do request you put your mask back on. And overall, everybody was great with it. We didn't have any pushback. We did have a few people that would be talking on their cell phone, and then 5 minutes later, they forgot to put their mask back on. But as a general experience, everybody was okay with it. And I've started to see some positives and some negatives. Some comments where people will say that they don't want to visit your establishment because you make people wear masks, and then we're not coming because you won't make people wear masks. So it's like 50-50. You can't predict it, but we were very happy with it. It worked out very well for us.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to address, that you've kind of got the polarized both ends of it, that no matter what your policy is, you're going to frustrate a certain segment of the population. And I can imagine, because you said at the beginning of that response there that there were long discussions about that leading into the opening. What was it that made you determine, you said that you are going to require guests to wear masks, knowing that again, you would potentially alienate a certain potential visitor, knowing that the other decision would alienate the other segment of visitors too?
Ultimately, it really comes down to what is the best practice. We're here to hopefully provide an environment that people feel comfortable in. And if you're a proponent for the mask, you're going to feel more comfortable in that environment. If you don't like the mask and you don't want to wear it, okay, I understand that. I don't like wearing the mask. It's uncomfortable. I have a beard. It gets hot. It's like a sauna on your face and your chin. It's uncomfortable, but I'm going to respect that business. And if I am that adamant about not wearing it, I'll come back at a time when I don't want to wear it. And thankfully, we didn't have anybody really abstain and that we had to turn away and just say, no, sorry, you're not coming in. Everybody was pretty proactive about it. But we were prepared for that in case it happened. If somebody did come in and say, you know what, no, I'm not wearing a mask. The county said I can't wear it, or I don't have to wear it. You can't make me wear it. Instead of responding with that hard-nosed pushback of, no, we can make you wear it. You will wear a mask here. We approached it. Our plan was to approach it more compassionately and just say, look, we're all in this together. Nobody wants to wear it. But in order for us to really be able to operate the park the way that we need to, it is better for us. We've got a lot of families, a lot of kids, a lot of grandparents that come out here. It is better to do it than to not do it. And we had everything ready to go. I mean, we were going to offer people coupons to come back on at another time when all of the restrictions were lifted and they can walk around without having to worry about any of that. But we got lucky that it didn't become an issue.
Yeah, David, and I think your approach was right on there. As far as being compassionate, I think that's one thing that I've seen a lot of people really focusing on. How can we be compassionate in this time? And yes, we have this guideline, but we also want to make sure people are having a good time. And so when you say things like, if they're still playing, if they're not quite done with the mini golf, let them finish. You know what I mean? Things like that. I think now is the time that you can have or exercise a little bit more compassion that way. And your crowds aren't so big that you need to, put as many people through the golf course as possible for efficiency, right? So, that consideration is kind of off the table. So I love what you're saying there about, just being really compassionate. I want to go back to the text you sent me just before you opened, because
oh my gosh, I don't even remember what that was.
Well, you had sent me some of those pictures that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But you also said like the adrenaline is palpable. Like this feeling of, excitement, you felt it in the air. So can you take me back to that time, and what was it like after, it seems like years that we've been closed down? What was it like to finally be able to say, yes, we can open?
So I think I talked about this, Matt, with you. I've talked about it with a few people lately. Leading up to Friday, I couldn't really compare that experience to anything else that we've had to really do. I mean, we're open year round. We've never been closed like this before. Mm-hmm. And really the only thing that I could relate it to was this time of year, as we're getting the water park open and as we're getting our park ready to operate for the summer for 100%. We're hiring new people, we're training, we're going through all of these extra steps for our summer program. We've got end of the year class trips and day camps and sometimes grad nights and all of these things that we're building and building and building through April into May. And it all culminates really that second week of May. So over the last 2.5 months, that hasn't been a motivator. It hasn't been there. That energy hasn't been there of getting things ready to go for our summer season and those school groups to start, those end of the year class trips. So it all kinds of builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And then you hit school groups and you're just going like 7 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. And the adrenaline is just rushing you through and you're just pumping for 6 weeks. And then we kind of go through another little change. But I know that that's not going to be there. So I put all of that energy that I would normally be putting into getting ready to operate the park into a smaller atmosphere. And I felt like I was like on energy overload because you're used to doing things a certain way and you just kind of condense it all down into a microcosm of what you're used to doing, and all that energy is still there. You're just like, okay, what do I do now? What did I miss? Is this, and you're just on crazy adrenaline endorphins. And it lasted until probably later that night. I got home and I was wiped out. I mean, yeah, it wasn't busy. We didn't have a lot of people here. It wasn't out of control. Everything was managed, but just my brain was going, analyzing every single little detail of how we were opening the park, what impression we had on the guests, what the response was on social media, and how people were viewing our reopening, and all that stress of at any moment something can change that can totally affect the environment. And it didn't, which was fantastic, but just that energy of, okay, all right, we're doing this. So here it goes. and there's no plan, or there is a plan, but there's no expectation. You don't know what to expect. It could be outstanding or it could be terrible. And we got very lucky that ours was on the good side of outstanding. It would have been nice if there was more people here, but we were able to learn and manage how everything was going and make those adjustments and improvements as we need to.
Cool. Can you tell us about the first guests that came back and how they felt and how you felt and how you showed them how you felt?
So, yeah, we were getting everything ready in the front for the welcome area. We had easy ups, we had our banner blades up, we had our signage up, we had put tape on the ground every 6 feet for a queue line to get into the building. We were just like putting those finishing touches on, and this was probably 45 minutes or so before we were ready to open. And car pulls into the parking lot. A young lady comes out, and she asks, "You guys are open today, right?" And I said, yeah, we'll be open in just a little bit. We'll be open at noon. And she goes, "Thank you. We are so glad you guys are back to being open." And they were annual pass holders. And she was just so excited that we were able to be reopened. And they've been here a lot over the course of their annual pass. My staff knew them and was like, "Yeah, welcome back, guys. How you doing?" And engaging with conversation with them. They were wearing their masks. It was a mom, a dad, and 2 kids. And they have been waiting 2.5 months to roller skate. That was the first thing they wanted to do, was go roller skating. And they skated for like an hour and a half. Then they went on the race cars a little bit, and then they played some mini golf. But it was just that excitement and enthusiasm that 45 minutes before we were ready to open the doors, we had a loyal annual pass holder here ready to go, excited, ready to help us open the doors. And she even brought her sister with her kids, came and got the 2-hour passes, bought them online ahead of time. And it was wonderful. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better opening of the doors than to have that experience. And then throughout the day, just that happening over and over again, people commenting to us when they're making their purchases about how glad they are that we're reopened. And with Dairy Queen, our Dairy Queen, we don't have a drive-through. We're not the full menu with the hamburgers and the chicken strips and things like that. We're the treat store model. So people come to our store because it's our store. They will not go to the other Dairy Queens that may be around us, which there's a few within 10 miles or so, but they wait for us. And that was incredible to have that experience, that guests would come in and say, "We've been waiting for you guys to come back open because we wanted our Dairy Queen to be open."
Nice. And Josh, that kind of proves your point, right? That
Thank you for saying
the first guests that come back are going to be your most loyal, right?
I think the picture you just painted right there was exactly what my thought was when I tweeted that. Shortly after everything shut down, David, I just had this. I think I tweeted it and posted it on LinkedIn. I said, the first guests that visit you when you reopen are going to be your most loyal, and then kind of calling out of just saying, make sure they know that you know that. And so you just telling that story right there, just I mean, yes, Matt, yes, it may have proved my point, but it just made me feel very optimistic about just everything that we now have ahead of us.
That family that came out they were the first in line on Saturday, or on Friday. They were the first in line on Saturday, and they were the first in line on Sunday. They came all 3 days.
That's awesome.
So another question that we wanted to ask you too is because the last time we had the opportunity to talk to you, you said that leading into your opening that you were doing some research with your guests and sending out surveys, and that you hope to have a response or some data that you'd be able to share. So just curious to follow up on that, to see what answers you got and what learnings you gained from that.
Unfortunately, we ran into a little bit of a technical issue trying to get the survey out, so we weren't able to get it out prior to opening. We're still exploring sending it out now that we've been open a week, and getting it out there to the customers, because there are still a lot of people that may not know that we are open, and that data I think can still be useful. So we are exploring that, but we ran into just a hiccup with trying to get it out on time. And unfortunately, we only had a little bit of a window where we could get it out before we had to move on to other projects. But it is there. We've got it all ready to go. We are hoping to send that out. It's just, we got a little too many things on the plate to get that done in the time we needed to get it done.
Sure.
So that it will. My hope is that it will still be coming, but just a little bit of a delay on that one.
We'll save that for the third video.
That's right.
I hope so.
That's
I
right.
feel like Saturday Night Live, I'm going to be on here 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it'll be just the David Crandall series. Well, David, this has been absolutely wonderful to hear all the good news, and the families coming back, and the way you've been able to change and pivot your business. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you think is worth sharing with people that we're either learnings or things that you just want to talk a little bit about before we sign off?
Well, it's just interesting how fluid our society is right now, and our little pockets of the country. We tried to do something for Easter and had negative feedback, and it got to the point where we did cancel the event that we were planning for Easter. It was a drive-through, say hi to the Easter Bunny and get a bag of Easter eggs, non-contact. We were just going to hand them into the car, wave to you, Easter Bunny wave to you, and drive through the parking lot. It was supposed to be very easy, very controlled, and our area was in no way ready for that. Well, a specific portion of our area. A lot of people responded to it and were very excited about it and were happy about it. And then you had the extreme opposite of that. They got very vocal about the fact that we shouldn't be doing it. And unfortunately, that side won that battle. And the people that were excited about it were disappointed that we weren't having it, but they weren't disappointed in the fact that we'll never come to you again, and you guys said you were going to do this and now you're not. Why are you caving? And it didn't even get to that, which showed us a lot about our supporters, that they're going to be there. Our like Josh said, our biggest fans will still be there. And a month later, literally almost 1 month later, we were able to open with very little. We had 2 comments that were kind of not supportive, is what I would call them. Everybody else was incredibly supportive. And it was funny. I think one of the other talks that I was on, somebody was saying that you're going to have people start attacking each other because you're one way and you're the other way, and you just start personally attacking people. And we've seen a little bit of that, where it's like, come on, it's just a fun park, and they're just trying to have a good time, and they're providing a safe place, and if you don't like it, stay home. It's interesting to see that those responses start to come out. I don't encourage it by any means, but you just see that as a society, we are starting to recover. Matt, you had talked about the stages of grief that we go through with this, and everybody is in their own stage, and we can't hold ourselves back because somebody else may be in a different stage of grief than us. And it's hard, and it's not fair, but unfortunately we all go through this at a different level. So that my encouraging words is just define your path with what you feel comfortable with, and keep your values in line. The responses that somebody put on your Attraction Pros, the responses to guests when they have comments and questions, it came out yesterday, was fantastic. I loved that, because it's that compassionate response. It's you don't have to be angry. You don't have to get upset. It's, look, this is what we're in, and we're trying to do the best we can, and we're following all the recommendations from the government, and we're going to get through this, and it's one step at a time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I just got to say, kind of as we, wrap this up here, when we started this video, video series, a couple of months ago, it was very much to try to understand what it is that's going on right now, and just trying to figure out of just what the next paths forward, with this completely unknown ending of, when the industry was going to reopen. And now I think this is the 25th video that we've done throughout this series. And this has, while there's always been kind of this sense of optimism in it, this definitely has a completely different tone with that, because now, we are able to gain even more clarity of what it is to be operating, during this time, and to be getting through it. So with that, I just want to thank you so much for giving us the time and kind of sharing what's going on at Fiesta Village.
You're welcome. I'm glad that I'm able to at least give a piece of something that we're doing, and hopefully as an industry, even from the Disneys down to the little theme parks and family fun centers like me, and we're all starting over, and anything that anybody can get to help that path is beneficial. I don't want to see family fun centers closed, and we've seen a few of them already say that they're not going to be reopening. Indoor facilities that have said, nope, we're done, we can't afford it. And that really does hurt the industry. And I mean, anything that we can do as a community in the hospitality, entertainment, fun park community to help keep all of our doors open is better for all of us. And nobody wants to see anybody go out of business.
Right.
Exactly. Well, David, thank you again for your time today, and thank you for sharing your story and all the great things that are happening there at Fiesta Village. We wish you nothing but the best, continued health, continued wellness for you and your staff and your family. And hey, maybe we'll have you on another time, and you can tell us about how great your phase 3, 4, and 5 openings are.
Yeah, hopefully by the time water slides open, I'll have some good stories for that too.
Awesome.
Can't wait.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, guys.